Gur mille maithagad a chéarán, gur maithagad a Francés agus pobl An Creagán. Díomh a chairde, fáilte roimh. An tróna seo be méid caint faoi logainmneacha agus be méid caint go háirithe faoi logainmneacha i sléibhte chunta Éirinn. Be méid lé cuid duine focail tíortha atá le fáil in ainmneacha sléibhte agus cnic, agus freisin rint focail tíortha atá le fáil in ainmneacha na mbailte Pheadair sa cnic. So this evening we'll be talking about place names, and I will be talking particularly about place names in the mountains of County Tyrone. I'll be discussing some of the common words found in names of mountains and hills, and also some common words which occur in the names of townlands in the hills. And I hope I will show that place names can inform us a lot about the landscape and about nature, both in the present and also to some extent how the landscape and nature was in the past. And I hope also to show that place names are a great resource for learners of Irish, children and adults alike. And I include that myself in that. I came to Irish as an adult learner, and my background is initially as a linguist. I focused on German and Italian actually, and then took a sidestep into Irish studies when I came to Ireland in 1990. I'm an independent researcher. In the past I have been in academia, but now it's a hobby. It's a strong hobby for me. And I also, another angle that I come into this from is as a hill walker. I'm a very keen hill walker, and both kind of out of interest and also professionally. I've worked as a tour guide, and that's brought me around to lots of different parts of Ireland. So the fact of being a hill walker was one of the things that got me into the place names, and that's also why I have a particularly strong interest for the mountain and hill names and the place names in mountain landscape, like the Sperrins area in Tyrone. So I hope you're all seeing my my slideshow, and I'm going to go forwards. Can you all see a map? Are you all seeing that? Yeah. Okay, super. So this is not the best ever map of Tyrone, but it's just really to put it in a little bit of context to show that the county is landlocked and has a number of hills, and especially in the north part of the county, there is a lot of hills. So the highest mountain in County Tyrone is Sowell, which is just over 600 meters, and on the border with County Derry. We've got I wanted to show kind of the range of mountains that we have in County Tyrone before I go on to look at some of them in detail. So the Sperrin Mountains is the largest group in County Tyrone. In Irish nowadays, they're usually referred to as Sliabh Speirlín, the mountains of Sperrin, which is also a hamlet in Glenelly at the foot of those mountains. But it's a very modern name, and it's probably a name that was actually introduced through Irish language geography books in the 20th century. it's not very widely used by Irish speakers, and they might historically they referred to these mountains as Sliabh Sheas. Sheas, in this sense, refers to the north. You'll be aware of Sheas meaning kind of down, but in the Middle Ages in particular, Sheas was used to refer to the direction north. So it simply means the mountains of the north, which is appropriate for mountains in the north of Ulster. And you can see that we've got a number of different elements cropping up in the mountain names that I have listed there. We have Sliabh mentioned in Sliabh Kirk, and Sliabh Mor, Sliabh Bech, and so on. We have a couple with Mullach, Mullacarn, which is a mountain that we're going to be climbing on Sunday, not far from Omagh, and Mullifa in the far west of the county, and a number of other elements. So I'm going to look next at the most common mountain names, mountain elements, or the words for mountains or hills in Ireland. So a while ago, I made a study of the most common elements, really just by building a database of the hills and mountains over 400 meters, and some of the significant ones below 400 meters. And there were 5 elements that I found in all the names, in all parts of Ireland, that occurred repeatedly. So they were Beaun or Bean, Cnook, which in Ulster is often pronounced Crook, usually pronounced Crook, Cruach, Mullach, and Sliabh. And on this slide, you can see how they're usually anglicized, and they will be anglicized differently. Sometimes it's a little bit random. Sometimes it's to do with the particular area. I studied these elements in a dissertation in the early 2000s, and this was what I found, that these 5 were the most common of all. You can see them on the right-hand side of the pie chart, and by far the most common was Sliabh, and altogether Bean, Cnook, Cruach, Mullach, and Sliabh accounted for about half the names of major mountains and hills in Ireland. So we're going to have a look at these words now in a little bit of detail. So first of all, Beaun or Bean, they're really just 2 forms of the same word, and Beaun would be the nominative, but very often it's an oblique form, Bean, that we have in names, in Irish names, rather than Beaun. So this word usually means a mountain peak. We've seen it can be anglicized as Ben, Bin, or Bean. It's sometimes translated as hill or mountain, not very often, but we've got some examples there from around Ulster. Binevna in County Derry. Binuava is Cave Hill near Belfast in County Antrim. Binvradach in County Derry, kind of at the northern edge really of the Sperrins. And in the plural, Beauna Boracha, the Irish name of the Mourne Mountains in County Down. So this is a common element found throughout Ireland, but it's not actually very common in County Tyrone or in the Sperrin Mountains. And there's an obvious reason for this. It tends to refer to quite rugged mountains, and the hills, although there's some very high hills and mountains in Tyrone, most of them are quite rolling, and there's not so much rock outcropping, and so we don't find this element so much, because it usually denotes a quite craggy hill or mountain. Like this, Binevana in County Derry, not far from the north coast. Quite dramatic cliffs here. Sorry, before I show you Knock, I should just show you a resource that will be of interest. Now, can you all see there a distribution map for bean?
Yes, we can.
Yeah. So this is from logainmneacha, and it's a resource from the Irish Place Names branch connected with the Ordnance Survey, and it shows you the distribution of this element. The green dots are mainly townlands. They're where the word occurs in administrative names, and then the red is in minor names. And you can see there's very few of either in County Tyrone. There's one green dot and one red dot on the edge. It's worth checking out these resources on logainmneacha. It's not just good for looking up individual names, it's quite good for showing you these patterns. So, right, I'm going to scoot forwards. Excuse me. Right. Okay. The next element is knuck or crook, usually translated just as hill. And in Ulster, we have, for example, Knocklehead, Knocklade in County Antrim, not far from Fairhead, Knockdhu, near Larne, Crockrower, and that's in County Tyrone, not far from An Creagán. You can see there it's actually anglicised as Crock, reflecting the local dialect. And another example again in the plural, Cnic Irish, the Uris Hills on the Inishowen Peninsula in County Donegal. Another example from Donegal, Crockfulla or Bloody Foreland at the northwest corner of Ireland. It's the name. It's the name principally of the hill and not of the headland in Irish. The next element is Slieve, and this is perhaps the most complex of these 5 common elements, because it has a range of different meanings. It can mean an individual mountain peak. It can refer to an area of moorland, or it can refer to a whole range of hills or mountains. It's usually anglicised as Slieve or Slew, sometimes translated as mountain rather than anglicised. So, for example, Slieve Aniller in Kerry is translated as Mount Eagle, or sometimes we get names with mountain. Examples from Ulster of Slieve. These are the first 3 are all individual peaks, Slieve Donart in the Mournes, the highest mountain in Ulster. Slieve Gallen, Slieve Gallion in County Derry, and Slieve Gullion, Slieve Gullion in County Armagh. And then Slieve Sperin or Slieve Sheas at the Sperin Mountains is an example of it being used to refer to a range of hills. So here's a picture from the Mournes of Slieve Beag, Slieve Barnach, taken from Slieve Donard. And in the Mournes, it's very typical that the word has this meaning of an individual peak. And very many of the peaks in the Mournes have this element. It is by far the most predominant element there. And it's also the place with the largest concentration of this element in Ireland. Slieve Gallen, not too far away from the border with Tyrone. And Sleumish, Slemish, County Antrim, associated with St. Patrick. The next element then is cruach, which means a stack. And it's very typically used to refer to a hill or a mountain which has a triangular profile, a conical shape or a triangular profile, like a haystack or a stack of turf. It's usually anglicized as croch, occasionally translated as stack or reek. Reek is actually a form of the English word rick, like hay rick, as an alternative to haystack. So, for example, McGillicuddy's Reeks, the highest mountains in Ireland, actually is a translation of this word cruach. Some examples from Ulster: An Cruach Gorham, the highest mountain in the Blue Stacks Mountains in County Donegal. An Cruach War, Croch Mór in County Antrim. And the range na Cruacha Gorama or often Stacks Mountains. This element is very rare in Tyrone and in the Sperin Mountains. Very few examples. Here's one that shows the classic conical shape, and it's a very familiar mountain, one of the best known mountains in Ireland. Croch Patrick, Croch Fádric in County Mayo, a mountain of pilgrimage, of course. Here's na Cruacha Dubha, McGillicuddy's Reeks, which I mentioned a moment ago, the highest mountains in Ireland. I was here last Sunday. This is An Creagán, so it's got the suffix on it, but it still refers to a peak. You can see that it has that triangular shape. It's a rather flattened. It's not such a sharp point as na Cruacha Dubha, McGillicuddy's Reeks, but nevertheless it corresponds to that pattern of a triangular shape. That's Creagán in County Antrim, not far from Ballycastle. And then the last of these five is Mullach, meaning a summit. And this is particularly common in County Tyrone and in the Sperin Mountains. It's also found in County Derry, in the Sperrins, and in other parts of Derry. It's usually anglicized as Mullach or Mully, very rarely translated. So some examples: Mullach Bawn in County Armagh, Mullach Carn, which we're climbing on Sunday, Mullach Mór in the Sperrins, just over the border in Derry, and Mullach na Drí Shrúchán in the Blue Stacks Mountains in County Donegal. The Sperrin Mountains are, it's actually the range where there is the largest concentration of this element in the whole of Ireland. And I can give you a sense of that. Here's Mullach Mór. Here's Mullach Carn. This is taken from a previous walk that we did as on an earlier event with the Féile Pheadair Joe, and we approached from the west side across the moorland on that occasion, and you can see the group at the summit there, and you can see in the foreground the cairn that gives its name to the mountain, which accounts for the second part, the cairn in Mullach Carn. And here's the view from Mullach Carn. You can see that looking to the north, there's no less than 5 peaks in the Sperrins visible that have the generic element Mullach in the name. Mullach Storachin, Mullach Clocha, Mullach Bawn, Mullach Du, and Mullach Bollock. And I hope that we have fine weather like this on Sunday. On that occasion, we were able to see the hills in northwest Donegal, the very peaky mountain that you can see on the horizon there is Éirinn, and we could also see back to Slemish near the east coast, the northeast coast. Right, I want to talk a little bit about some other landscape features other than the mountains themselves. So very important in the mountain landscape are the glens. And the element glaun is very common in the glens all over Ireland. The majority of valleys in the Sperrins have a name beginning with glen, and all of them on this page. So you can see Glaun Chordal, Glaun Achla, Glen Eile, Glaun Chol, Glen Sawiske, Glen Sawisk, and so on. Here's Glen Sawisk, Glen Sawiske, the Glen of the Heifer, and that's just one example of a name that that features an animal as the second part, as the qualifying part of the name. And I'll be talking about those a little bit more in a moment. These names also all have glaun in them. Some of them again have animals. Glenagapple, Glen of the Horses, and Connie Glen. I was discussing this this morning with Francis. It seems to me to be an English language name using glen because of the structure, because of the fact that glen is the second element, and I think it's most likely that what we have as the first element is the English word coney, meaning a rabbit. There's a few of them where there's no definite interpretation. The last two you can see there, I haven't put an Irish form, and you know, they're examples of names where it's a little bit difficult to be certain, so I haven't speculated about the interpretation of Glen Éirinn and Glen Roe. Also common in the names of valleys are alt, often a mountain valley or a ravine on the side of a mountain, and also Shra. So we have some examples here. Alt Nakam Kosha, Glen of the Crooked Leg, probably referring to a dogleg shaped mountain valley. Alta Taggart, Alta Turk, and so on. Ravine of the Altan Turk, Ravine of the Boar. The names with Shra usually get anglicized as Stra or Strath. So Stradawan or Stradavan, there are different pronunciations. Seems to be the deep river home or the deep valley. The Strathroy is probably familiar to you in that form. Officially on the maps, it's marked as Strathroy. It comes from the Irish and Shrach Crua, the hard river home or the hard valley. So you can see there's a number of examples of that too. In the passes, there isn't really any one element that dominates, and one of the things that I noticed about mountain passes in the Sperrin Mountains is that they are often named after features that are at the pass rather than the pass itself. That's not true of the first one. Barnas Gap is simply Anbarnas, meaning the gap, and the English word gap has been added, so it's a bit tautological. Mollaslin Gap, it's difficult to find an Irish form for the whole name, but Mollaslinia is the hilltop of the flat stone, so it'd probably be appropriate to call it Berna Waliach Slinia in Irish. But then there's a number of others with names that refer to features there, like Clochornach, also called the County Rock, on the county boundary between Tyrone and Derry, on the main watershed of the Sperrins. Clochornach possibly comes from Cloch Hioranach, the stone of the boundary marking. Shane Barnes Sentry Box is a very unusual name, not far from Pomeroy. There is not much to see there now, but there may have been some kind of hut or some other wooden structure. The name is connected with Shane Barnett Donnelly, a rapparee, and he may have had a hut there. And there are some names. There are not only names in Irish, but there's also some names that show some Scots or Ulster Scots elements, like Todd's Leap includes the Scots word Todd. It isn't the surname. It's Todd, meaning a fox. We only have the name in this form, but it may have been a translation of an Irish name such as Layman Chunny. And that's only speculation, but we do know that there are other examples of names in Ireland with leap, where we know that they are translations of names like Léacht, leap of the deer, logainmneacha, leap of the doe, and so on. Here's Barnes Gap, seen from Glenelly. And here's Todd. This is the road leading up to Todd's Leap. It's difficult to know actually what kind of feature Todd's Leap really refers to, but there is a pass, and there's some hills on either side, and it may have referred to the pass itself or the hills, probably with with a story of imagining the fox jumping from one side to the other, which is a kind of common theme in folklore. There's quite a lot of lochans in the hill country. Here's just really a smattering of them. So Loch Fay Loch Fa, Lake of the Rushes, in the east of the Sperrins, Loch Fingrian, Lake of the White Gravel, Loch McCrory, which is also the name of a townland, the townland in which the lake itself is situated, McCrory's Lake, and Loch na Nalog, Lake of the Swallows. So all but the second, third, and fourth examples there, they're all quite close to An Creagán, just to the west of An Creagán. There's Loch Fingrian and Loch McCrory seen from Malacharn on that walk in 2008. And this is Francis' picture of Loch na Nalog, Lake of the Swallows. Oops, sorry, just bear with me while I go back. Wanted just to highlight the number of place names in the hill country that refer to nature, to the different groups, really, to animals, vegetable, and mineral. And here, the vegetable kingdom is represented by quite a lot of trees and some other plants. So in Beichmore, we have bechach, abounding in birch. In Glen Hull, we have coll, the hazel tree. In Falacharn, we have Cairn, the rowan tree or mountain ash. In Tirnaski, Sciach, which is a thorn bush or hawthorn, and so on. You can see there's a lot of names that refer to trees and other plants. Particularly interesting are the ones that are near the bottom that are not trees. Léacht, not far from Carrickmore, means hollow of the shamrocks. Copney is from Cophanach, meaning abounding in dock leaves. So these resources were very important to the community, especially to farming people. And shamrock, of course, would have been used on St. Patrick's Day, for example, and dock leaves would have had a medicinal purpose, for example, as an antidote to nettle stings. And the last one there, Sheskin Shul, means the moving bog, literally the walking bog, moving bog. That's the townland in which the village of Greencastle is located. I've just got a couple of pictures to illustrate two of these names. A few weeks ago, with Francis, we were out in Glen Hull, and you can see the view of the valley there. And we visited a neighbour of Francis's, and he directed us to a clump of hazels alongside the burn at the back of the farmhouse. So you can see that you can actually still find these trees, in a lot of cases quite common in the townlands whose names mention them. And another example here is Tirnaski from Tirnaskiach, land of the thorn bushes, and that's just a little bit south of Carrickmore. A lot of names are also derived from animals. In some cases, they're animals, they're farm animals, such as the sowisk, the heifer in Glen Sowisk, or couple in Glenagoppel, the horse. In other cases, they are wild animals, such as birds like iller, eagle, Creagán, and Loch na Nalog, Lake of the Swallows, Shunnach, the fox, occurring in Croch na Shinnach, And there are cases where we have animals that are now extinct, but the place name was given at a time when these animals were more common. So Mullach Turk and Alta Turk Glen both include the element torc, referring to a wild boar. And names derived from stone are also particularly common. Just in the High Sperrins, you have a number of names like Mullach Clochar and Mullach Carbetach that refer to stony places. Clochar is a stony patch, and the word Carbetach comes from carbid, meaning a boulder. So Carbetach is a bouldery, something bouldery. Mullach Carbetach is the bouldery summit. Mullach Slin is the summit of the flat stone, or possibly of slate. Mullach Carn is simply the summit of the cairn, and it's well known for the cairn at the summit, which is visited on Cairn Sunday at the end of July every year. We have it in some combined with some other elements as well, like Paul Léacht, which is a mountain. Paul usually means a hole or even a pool, but in this case it refers to a mountain. And Léacht is a burial cairn or a monument, quite similar to Carn. Acha Galán includes Galán, the standing stone. And here's one that you might not think of as including an element referring to stone, but there is a townland not far from Omagh called Corradina. It literally means the round hill of the person, but it probably refers to a standing stone that resembles a human figure. So, Sinead, Gora Mila Mahagib, Kharja, thank you very much. Kieran, do you want to, will I pass,
Paul,
pass back to you?
Before I would do that, we'll have a question coming in there on the chat. Can you see it there? It's from Braden. It's do you find any deer trap place names in the Irish mountains? Can you see it in your chat? There's Ceilteacha and
let's see.
How on to see? What I might do is, Braden, let's make you unmute yourself, and if you'd like to ask the question out loud, because I could be butchering some of the pronunciation.
Right. Yeah, I see it. I see it now. Yeah.
Paul, it's Michael Ansell here. Hi.
Hi, Michael. How are you doing?
No bad, thanks. Yeah, I've been looking into this recently. I know Rory's well into this subject as well, but almost everywhere you go, in the Scottish mountains, you'll find Elrigs and Ceilteacha and so on, and also the remains of these traps for hunting deer, but they seem to be conspicuous by their absence in Ireland. And I wondered, with your tremendous journeying around the place, whether you've come across any of these.
I haven't, and we've discussed this before, but it's been a good while, and I can say I still haven't come across any examples of eile. But there are definitely examples of shelag referring to hunting, and I mean, of course, there are plenty of names referring to deer. Some of them are legends from the Finn cycle. Some of them are probably names, simple names referring to the fact that the place was frequented by deer. But I mean, I think, what can I say? I don't think it's likely that you'd find examples of Elric, but finding other names that refer to deer hunting is quite possible. And I mean, it's known from archaeology that this was quite a common practice in Ireland, for example, to drive deer towards a lake and to have traps set up with spikes and so on. Archaeologists have found found evidence for these practices in Ireland as well. So there is every reason for to find place names connected with them, just not that particular element, I think.
Yeah, I won't take up any more of your time, Paul, just now. But that picture you showed of Binevina.
Yes.
Right at the foot of those cliffs, if you look on Google Earth, there's a fantastic topographical feature that looks just like a Scottish Elric.
Yeah.
And there's a place name in the Annals of Ulster or whatever near there that's very similar to Elric.
We must investigate that. Please send me the reference and yeah.
Look on Google Earth. It's really impressive.
Yeah, I know. Well, I'm very fond of climbing Binevina, so maybe I'll take a trip out there once again and have a look as well.
Yeah.
That's very interesting, Michael. One thing I forgot to mention. One of the glens that I had on my list, but I forgot to kind of pick it out there, was Glen Léacht, and I think that may actually have an example of the word Lárig, which is found in the names of Scottish mountain passes. So there are instances where there are words that are kind of typical of Scottish landscape, but where we have a few examples. If I'm right about that one, it may be the only one in Ireland, but it's the only way that I can make sense of that name, Glen Léacht, as Glen Lárig, Glen of the Pass. And what convinces me that that's a good interpretation of it is that there is also a lough very near the summit of the pass, which is called in English Loch Lark. So it makes perfect sense as Loch of the Pass. So there's an example of a Scottish-Irish connection that isn't well known and maybe deserves a little bit more investigation.
Thanks very much, Paul, and thanks for your question, Michael. Your handle flummoxed me somewhat, so but thanks very much for that.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. It was good to hear from you again.
And of course, we'll have plenty. We still have an opportunity for questions later on. Just to tuck that one, Michael, as you had mentioned, Paul. But now, Ruairí, we'll pass to you, and you take over. There was a couple of mentions of the links between Scottish, so I think this is where you'll really come into your own. You're muted at the minute, Ruairí.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll try and bring this up now. Hello. Can you? Yeah, I'm still connected. I'm sorry. Oops.
Yeah, you are, Ruairí.
Right. Yeah, it was at 8 o'clock. My whole system went down, but I got back on it. So, ta fáte ráh, chun de nuas fiske Mas Ruairí McClean, tá mí imachán in Inverness, Ceilteacha na tuaisceart na Halapan. Ach anis tá mé in Iarchearst na Ceilteach, in Tír Magúchis. So, ní mé lifa Ceilteacha, go Malaysical, tá mé lifa Ceilteacha na Halapan. So I'm going to be delivering most of this in English, but you'll see so many similarities between the two, and just give me a shout if you can't hear what I'm saying. I've called this Tíortha and Beawns and Gleaun. I don't have to translate that for anybody who's been listening to Paul's wonderful presentation. So Bain is very common with us as well, so I'm going to do some comparisons. It can be pronounced Bain, Bean, Bain. You'll hear all three of those, and it's a distinct double N at the end of it, so it can't be misconstrued to be meaning a woman or a wife. But it does give us the English and the Scots Ben from it. And get this working correctly. It was originally Beawn, as Paul mentioned, and what we now have is an inflected form, Bain, simply because it's a feminine word, and people would say Hamied Vain, and Beawn eventually became Bain. And I asked an old man in Applecross, where I am right now, the country of my people in the West Highlands, an old Gaelic speaker. I said to him, just to see what he said, what's your word for a mountain? He said, Beawn. And then he corrected himself and he said, well, actually, Bain. So the word Beawn was kind of still in his head as being the original word for a mountain. And lots of our big mountains are Bain. Bain Nevis, the highest one we have. Anglicized Ben Nevis, and the meaning of that, if you've got the notes, I've put in some of these, we don't know what that one's. That's still a bit of a puzzle. Bain Jedek, I'll just give you our pronunciation so you hear the slight differences perhaps from your own. The Red Mountain, of course, that's easily understood. There's 30 of them in Scotland, Bain Jedek, usually with the rock type. Bain Éire, that's in the Western Highlands, and not far from where I am here. And that means a file mountain. And the reason for that is the end on, the shape of the mountain is rather like one of the old three-sided files. Bain na Cailteacha. The Cailteacha is a very important part of our landscape, and it translates as old woman. So Bain na Cailteacha, the mountain of the old woman. However, it often refers to a supernatural creature who was originally perhaps a goddess of winter, and there are many stories of the Cailleach who protected her part of the mountain. I would like to see a whole lot more exploration of the concept of the Cailleach in a Scottish context. This one is particularly connected, the one in the pictures in the Isle of Skye, it's particularly connected with Grania, who was the wife of Fionn, and who, according to folklore in this area, was taken away and died and was buried on the top of that mountain. And then we have Ben Lomond, a very famous one, not too far from Glasgow. That actually gave the name to the loch. The loch had an earlier name. It might have ended up today as another of our Loch Levens, but it didn't, because the mountain, the Beacon Mountain, Lomond, gave its name to the loch, so it became Loch Lomond, or in Scots, Loch Lomond. And then there's Beniola, you'll see at the top of this map here, Beniola. That's rather unusual because it's a man's name. There aren't too many mountains carrying people's names, but this is one, and we know who he was. He was called Fionn le Dubh and Fiag, black-haired Finlay of the Deer, and he lived in the 16th century and guarded the hunting rights of this part of the Highlands. So there. And then we have some quite complex names that are tricky for some of the hill walkers who don't know the country very well. That's Bain Vuya na Cullamore, Bain Vuya na Cullamore. And that means the yellow mountain of the big wood or big forest. And there's an indication that there was a forest next to that at one time. It may not be there now. It gives us some ecological information. And then this beautiful mountain on the Isle of Skye adds another element to maybe what you've been considering in Ireland. That is the Norse influence in Scotland, which in the northwest of the country is quite noted, and particularly when you get out to the Western Isles, to the areas that were once controlled by the Norse. So there we have a mountain called Blavan in English, or Blavane in Gaelic, but its original is almost certainly the Norse Blafjall, Blafjall meaning blue mountain. And then when Gaelic came in, it was natural to call it Blavein, and then that became the English Blaven. I'll just let you have a look at this for a second. You may recognize some of these words. I show this basically usually at the start of a presentation about the mountain landscape, just to make the point that Gaelic has a very strong relationship with the landscape in which it came to maturity as a language. Of course, it has a lot in common with Ireland too, as we'll see. But I mean, I stopped at 110 because I felt it made the point. You know, there's a lot of heritage there, and I keep saying to young Gaelic speakers, there's a PhD there waiting for it to be done, analysing just why different things were called different names. If I were young again, I might think about it, but I don't think I will now. 18 of those, or thereabouts, maybe around 20, are parts of the body, human and animal. We don't have time to look at that today, but it's a rather interesting thing that people would take body parts and transfer them out onto the landscape. The one or two there you might think a little bit dodgy in terms of the modern era and how we view the human body, but back in the old days they didn't have a problem with calling a mountain a penis. And dream is maybe one we're a bit more comfortable with, a back of an animal. If you think of a dog lying down, its dream makes the shape of a mountain ridge. And so we have many, many hills with ridges called dream, and that's dream two, the black or dark ridge. And you'll notice in Scotland, as in Ulster, I understand we don't pronounce the PH anymore. The dove pronunciation has gone, so it's just do. And there's dream a chullich, the ridge of the cock, and that's probably the black cock, the wild bird, the black cock. Another element we have is strawn, so we say it, a nose, and the nose at the end of a mountain running down into low country is often a strawn, and that can be the name of the mountain itself. And there's an example in the Cairngorms, Strawn Riavach, the brindled ridge nose, you might say. And that might help you to answer this question. I've got one or two wee questions in my notes just to stimulate people to think about things. Which element in the periodic table has a name derived from a Gaelic place name? Well, some of you will probably know the answer to that. It is, of course, strontium. And it comes from the Gaelic Strawn in Chihan, which is the Strontian, the name of a village in Ardnamurchan in the West Highlands. And there it is on an old map. You can see Tuam and Chihan, the hillock of the Fairy Knoll, Sheehan, and Strontian next to it, so Strawn and Sheehan. And this word Sheehan is a conical hill, but very often associated in folklore with the Sheehan, or the fairies, as they're often translated. Unach's another word, I don't know whether you have it. Unach, there's a Gyar Unach and Unach Du, there's both in Glencoe, very big hills, and the Unach Ekach, which is the notched ridge in Glencoe, which is often mispronounced, the Unach Ekach, but Unach is a kind of big mountain with a ridge really and steep sides on both sides of it, and Unach. Knoch. So there's a difference in pronunciation here with the Irish situation. Like Ulster, we pronounce it almost like a nasalized R at the beginning. So it would have originally been knock, probably, long time ago. It became croc, or has become knock in Scotland. But beyond that, we also have what we call pre-aspiration. So we say knoch. And the pre-aspiration is very interesting. It occurs in most Scottish Gaelic dialects, and it appears to be a Norse influence, so certainly that's the thinking, because it occurs in quite a number of North Atlantic languages. And we find it in mach for sun rather than mach, and so on. So knoch is one of the ones I get early on to try and get my Gaelic learners to get their tongues around the name. And there's a Croch Ower at the top of the map there, or Croch Ower, which means the dun-coloured hill. And Croch Nishillig, Michael was talking about hunting names. There's the hill of the hunting, Croch Nishillig. Croch Yún. If it was Fionn meaning fair, it would be Croch Fionn, because Croch is a masculine noun. However, it's Croch Yún, which means it's the genitive form of Fionn. It's Fionn Machcuil. This is the hill of Finn Maccool, hill of Fionn. We have lots and lots of places named in the landscape for the Fianna. just as you do, I'm sure. And it's one of our great sort of shared parts of our cultural heritage. Just looking near Dingwall in the Eastern Highlands, I was doing a wee project with people there, and I just collected the names of some of the hills around there. They're almost all Gaelic, and there we have, you can see Croaghnach, Croagtainirich, Croaghnamania, Hill of the Peat, Croaghtú, and so on. The one at the bottom of the non-anglicized names, Croaghavúri, is quite interesting, the Hill of the Roaring. That is roaring of deer, stags perhaps, could be of cattle. In the Central Highlands, some of the people there reckon that the Boory names, the Boory, might even refer to the cry of the wolf in the days before the wolf became extinct. That one, I think the jury's still out on that. But you can see it also gets anglicized, as it does in Ireland, as knock bane. Sliev, word that's so common with you, not nearly as common with us. A mountain, extensive moorland, alpine heath. In general parlance, usually a moorland, sometimes high. There's one that isn't high, Slieven Cushachan. That's in the Eile, on the island of the moorland of the walkers. Sliev and Ruairí, the hill of the Black Slope. That one's in Strathglass, near Inverness. And there's where we're looking at Gaelic place names. There's the extent of the territory in which you will find Gaelic place names. But the ones that I tend to concentrate on are in the Ceilteacha. If we look around about 1400 AD, people would agree or disagree with the map. We can see roughly where the Ceilteacha became. The Gaelic receded into the southwest of the country, into Galloway and Carrick, and also into the northwest of the country, where it became the Ceilteacha. We see when the southwest of the country that some of the forms have been changed in time by the Scots language coming in and replacing Gaelic. So we get a hill like Michael Benan. The Benan would be Bianan, the small mountain, Michael large in Scots. And then just below that we've got Stay Fell, and that's the word fell, which is cognate with the Norse word fjall. Knockgower, which is quite clearly Croaggower, Hill of Goats, Croaggower. And then some Sliev names we've got in the southwest, in that southwest corner, became Slú, and they're more common there probably than most other parts of the country. Slúlia, Slievlia, the grey hill, and then above that, Sliev Donan, Donan's hill, becoming Slúdonan. Cruach, we also have as well, meaning a stack, just as with your own, and really with the same characteristics. Cruach nan Kulan is one of the puppies or the whelps. Cruach nan Kulan. And just to say something about Cruach, it's mostly found in what we would call the old Dalriata territory, where there was a common kingdom between Ireland and Scotland at one time, down in the southwest of the Ceilteacha. Yeah. Mullach, yes, we have that too. Not as common as you do, certainly not as common as in the Sperrins there. The summit of top of anything is the Mullach, top of a house. And so on, and you would refer to, if you look at toponyms, it's not particularly common. There's one, there's two actually in that particular map. Mullach Glashuil down in the bottom, the summit of the deep green corrie, Mullach Glashuil, and Mullach na Muile up at the top, Mullach na Muile, the summit of the bare hill, Mull meaning a bare hill, also meaning bold as an adjective. I wanted to just show a few different generics in Scotland that maybe will show some differences to what you're used to in Ireland. Carn, Crick, Meowl, Monagh, and Scoor. There's Carn and Fiachgal. Carn is a hill. In the west, it tends to be a rocky hill. In the Central Highlands, it's actually some of the biggest mountains. It became the default word almost for mountain rather than bain in parts of the Central and Eastern Highlands. So Carn and Fiachgal, the hill of the teeth. Teeth being bits of rock probably sticking up. Then our famous Cairngorm Mountains, we've got in Carn Goram. I'll come to that shortly, the name, and Carn and Lochan. So quite a few of the peaks there, quite high ones, some of the highest in the country. They are called Carn. And Carn, of course, is a pile of stone, so it gives the shape to the mountain concept. Crick, on the other hand, is a crag, related probably to crag. There's the Welsh crag as well, and rocky. It's a crag or a rocky hill, a creek. So Creek Nangal, the crag or rocky hill of the lowlanders. Creek Nangal. Creek Nangar, that's right up in the north of the Highlands in Caithness. Creek Nangar, the crag of the hares. A Chrickvor, the great crag, very craggy place. And then sometimes we have in the Gaelic landscape a pairing of things. So we have a Chrickvik and a Chrickvor next to each other, the little rocky hill and the big rocky hill. And that's a common feature of the landscape. The pairings are often big versus more, Fionn versus Du, that's common, and then Huas and Hias as comparators. Now the last two there, Huas and Hias, mean up and down, but in the Central Highlands that usually means to west and east, because there the tradition was that you went Suas, you went up west and down east. But like Paul was mentioning, in the Western Isles, north is down and south is up. So I'm going up south, I'm going down north. And these conventions, of course, predate the drawing of the maps. We have Meaul as a very common feature in our landscape. Meaul, a great hill of undistinguished shape, a lump, sort of called it there. We would use it, you know, if you say I've got a tremendous amount of work to do, I've got a big lump of work. So it's not a particularly distinguished name, but it's culturally interesting because there we have a Meaul Chinnel, and Chinnel means gathering. Now, the gathering hill would have been the hill where the people gathered at the beginning of a big hunt in the days when they hunted deer in large numbers and had dog handlers, probably going up in the beginning of the day to the Meaul Chinnel. And so a Meaul was ideal for that because it's a big rounded hill, not with a particular summit. And there's another Meaul, Meaul Buya, Yellow Mountain. And the Buya there is from the color of the grasses as they go a sort of yellow straw color in winter. And Buya is a very common descriptor in our landscape. Meaul Fuorvani, close to where I live in Inverness, that's Loch Ness in the foreground. That's the rounded hill of the cold high place, Fuorvani, which brings me to the word monarch, which is something, I don't know if you have it in Ireland, it's certainly relatively common here. Monarch, an upland, high country, a hill, a mountain range, in fact. And I just want to go back to the Cairn Gorms to explain how monarch gets used very often. We had this mountain on Cairn Goram, probably meaning the Blue Mountain as seen from a distance, which became anglicised Cairn Goram, and then gave its name to the mountains in English as the Cairn Gorms. However, that mountain range has an entirely different Gaelic name, which is a Monag Ruag. So we have two different colours, because Ruag, as you will know, means, or Rua, as it was pronounced locally there, means russet coloured. And the reason it's called the Russet Mountain Range was the rock type that makes it up, which is a pink granite and looks very Ruag at times. So Monag is very interesting. It's in quite a lot. There's the nearby we've got the Monag Lea Mountains, which is a tautology because it's just the Monag Lea. You don't need the word mountains there. And when we go to Wales, we see a related word. This is from North Wales, Mynydd Mawr. It's cognate to our Monag Môr. And Mynydd and Monag are effectively the same word with a separate evolution from Old P-Celtic. It would appear that Monag came from a Pictish word, was probably Pictish, Monad, into Gaelic, and has undergone a slight change over the centuries. And then we have Allt in Welsh, Allt Wen, white hillside. I noticed in Paul's presentation the word Allt for a ravine, probably related. It's a kind of high rock cliff, and it's thought that that's the source of the Gaelic word Alt, which gives us a burn or a stream. And there's an example of it, Alt and Nes Van Voor, Alt and Nes Van Voor, the burn of the big white waterfall. I'll just go, give me a wave, Kieran, if you think I'm going for too long, okay?
Keep her lit.
This is a high, sorry?
I say keep her lit, you're doing all right.
Okay. This is a burn or a stream way up in the Cairngorms. It's not actually an alt, because we have another word. I'd be interested to know if you have it as well, because it comes from an old Gaelic and Irish root. It's a thing called a cuachan. And a cuachan is a slow-flowing, partially heather-covered brook stream, not just heather, other vegetation as well. It's the sort of thing that you could step into and not realize it and break your ankle. And it comes from an old root word meaning blind. So it's the blind stream. You can't see it. And this one here is cuid, the black streamlet of the hill slope. I've got a friend who lives near Inverness called Renard Sandilands, and she decided to take a look at the word cuachan because it doesn't appear in the Ordnance Survey maps very much at all because of the scale they're at. But once you go down to a larger scale map, you suddenly see all these cuachans appearing. And this is a small area of hills just near where she lives, and she collected all these names for the different cuachans. There's tremendous heritage there of names that tell you about what was going on there, what was growing there. You can see looking at the names. Number 21 is a very interesting name, Cuachan na Pochtja, which means the stream of the illicit whiskey distilling place, where people were doing what they shouldn't be doing, perhaps, in the days when it was banned. And Scood is a very important word, particularly in the Western Highlands. It's a high, sharp-pointed mountain, and many of the peaks in the Cuillin and Skye are Scood. They're obviously a Scood. You won't find a Meowl in there, or probably not a Croch either. There's Scood and Gillian, the peak of the young men, although maybe having a different origin originally. Scood na Stree, the peak of the strife, probably going back to a clan battle. Scood na Stree. Scood na Sayat, the peak of the arrows. Scood na Lachbich, the peak of the bogland. And there are lots and lots of words for bogs. I've collected around about 50 words for bog in Gaelic, and there's quite a lot of big terminology there. And maybe I'll just finish off with another word, corre, because I mean, I could keep going for longer, but we have been going a while. But I did want to mention corre because it is very characteristic of the Scottish landscape. In some respects, perhaps the glories of our mountain landscape are not the summits, but the corrach and the corries. And the word started meaning a cauldron. I've been interested to know if you have it as that as well. In time, the word got transferred onto the landscape because the shape of a cauldron was the shape of these mountain glens cut out by the glaciers a long time ago. In the domestic situation, the word corre continued, so that when electricity came or when people had kettles, they called the kettle a corre. So it's undergone that sort of as a dual personality, if you like, today. There's an example, corre Vichgerecher, Farquharson's corre. That name goes back to a man from the 13th century, son of the Earl of Ross. That's in the just to the north of where I am at the moment, in Torridon. There's the northern corries again in the Cairngorms, and Corre Cass, the steep corrie. That's where you're going to build your ski slopes, which is exactly where they did build the ski slopes, because you get a nice steep run down the hill. Corre Treachke, the corrie of the snow, might be good for ski touring, but it hasn't got any steep slopes for normal people to ski down, unless you're really, really good. So that's Corre Treachke, and the next one along is Corre Lochan. Corre Lochan, the corrie of the Wee Loch. And finally, just a few miles from where I am today is Corre Atadal in Applecross. And Applecross, the name's actually Pictish originally, Applecrossan. It's the only Pictish survivor in this part of the world. It means the mouth of the Crossan River. But when St. Mulrua came from Bangor in the northern part of Ireland in the year 673 AD, he established a monastery here. And Gaelic has been spoken ever since that time here in Applecross, or what we call in Gaelic a chomarich, the sanctuary, because a sanctuary was created around his monastery and around the church there. Corre Atadal, the Atadal name is Norse. So it's one of the few Norse names on the peninsula here. and the Corrie is Gaelic. So in a sense, you're seeing a bit of a picture of the Scottish Highlands there. You've got 3 languages in there, but the Gaelic language is most certainly dominant. And if you come over to Scotland, those of you who are living in Ireland, I imagine it's most of you, you will find so much in our landscape that reflects very similar to your own mountain landscape in Ireland as well. Go to mbun.
Gur maiget Ruairí ínta mai. Just again foinse seo fosloí mé an rud seo amach go ceistena, but a ceistena ag daoine. I know that we had some questions that was coming in on Paul's, but if anyone would like to ask a question to either of the 2 boys, we'll have them here for a wee while, you know. I don't know when we'll next get Paul and Ruairí together in one Zoom session, so they're here for the benefit of your interest or anything like that there. Would you like to take off your sharing, Ruairí, so that we can see, yes, so that if anyone wanted to ask, that they can
trying to do it, but
hold on. I could maybe come in that there. So best way is if your camera's on, if you want to put up your hand then, or some signal my attention some way to ask a question. So we'll have one coming there from Tommy. So where you go, Tommy?
I was just to say to Paul, I found it particularly interesting about Glenlark. That's where my great-grandfather was born in 1878. And he set up a wee forge in the nearest town. I think is it Gorton or Gorston?
Gorton, yeah.
He set up a wee forge there, a smithy, and it was called Barney's Forge. And he came over to Ireland. He came over to Scotland not long after that, and spent the rest of his days in Scotland. But as a wee boy, I remember him still speaking Irish in his house. And some of the, you know, I remember him like saying, close the door, he would say, clug na durish. So when I was speaking to one of my friends who speaks Irish, and I was saying to her, you know, clug, does that mean anything to you? And she says, no. So I was just thinking about regional variations in Irish. I just thought I'd throw that in, you know.
That's very interesting. Did he have any view on the origin of the place name?
No, I didn't. If he did, it wasn't conveyed to me as a wee boy.
Yeah.
Sadly, all the people that could tell me are long away now.
Yeah.
I was just thinking that when you were speaking, you know.
Yeah. But it is true that the place names, you know, do often kind of tell us quite a lot about the dialect of an area, so that you get you know, local dialect pronunciations of the words. So for example, I mentioned Slemish, which is from Sleo-mish, County Antrim. There's exactly the same name in County Kerry, but pronounced Slieve-mish, referring to the range of mountains on the Dingle Peninsula. And you know, we see it with Knock, you know, Knock typically in the south, in Ulster, Crook. So the you know, the place names, the way that they're anglicized, often reflects these little local dialect variations, and you know, the variations in the vocabulary as well. So I had a few names with Shunnach in them, you know, like I'm trying to think, like Creagán, the rock of the fox. You wouldn't find those in the south, because it would usually be Madra Rua or Criffin. You know, so yeah, the place names are quite a good indicator of the different you know, the little distinctions in dialect.
Yes, I would like to see a lot more work done in that regard in Scotland, Paul, because we have the word Chunach and the Matug as well. Some of the Matug names are thought to maybe be the wolf rather than the fox, but that needs to be teased out as well. So we need a whole lot more people, getting their heads around our place names, because there's a tremendous richness there.
Yeah. We have quite a few names there that use Madu. So like Shliv Vadi, and it seems to refer to some kind of wild dog, either a fox or possibly wolves that were present there in the past. And it would be good to investigate that, to see if we can nail that down a little bit, to see which one it is. A tricky question, but again, the form Madu, it seems to be specific to Ulster, because in the south again it would be Madra.
You mentioned Larrick earlier on as well. I should have maybe picked up on that. That you thought of Glenlark, and Tommy's mentioning the name there as well. The word Larrick isn't so common in Scotland, but it does occur in a few places, and it's quite often, from my understanding, a fairly long pass. We have Bealach for a pass as well. That can be quite short sometimes, just a gap in the hills, for example. But Larrick tends to be longer, and some of our old droving routes would go through a Larrick at various times, going from one place to another. So we've got a couple of famous ones in the Cairngorm Mountains, the best known of which is the Larrick Roo. And it's certainly worth pursuing that, Paul, to see what you can find.
Yeah. You just to pick up on two other elements that you mentioned there. We have the element Éirinn. Can you pronounce that for me again? Because I know I won't do it justice.
The AO in Scottish Gaelic is U, so it's Una. So our word for heather is Frúg in Singly.
Yeah, we of course have that as an element meaning fair. So it would often come up as a qualifying element, but I don't think we have any instances of it as a generic in first place, referring to an actual topographical feature, which is what you had in the instances that you showed us with the beautiful illustrations of it. I think of sharply defined ridges, isn't that right?
Yes, I think the concept might be the same as the marketplace, because I think Unach, and we have Unach and Unachan as well. It's people coming together. It's Unach. It's the oneness, the coming together. And I suspect that the mountain Unach may have, because two sides of the mountain come together. That's my take on it, but again, it needs a lot more research.
Yeah, that's very interesting. That you think it might actually be that like two communities, and the mountain ridge seen as a kind of a watershed, the boundary between the two communities in the valleys on either side, or something like that.
It's possible, or just the two sides of the mountain, perhaps, rather than.
Yeah. Okay.
Can I just throw you out with 4 questions lined up here now? So we'll get through them. We'll start with the first one from Michael there. Can you see it in the chat there, lads? About Baina sometimes uses a rock off the coast in Galloway. Does that happen in Ireland or in the Highlands? Who wants to go first?
I don't think so. I can't think of any examples, but in the Highlands.
Right. Scan through it quickly.
Bean is a coastal rock. Bean or Biaun is a coastal rock. Is that the essence of it? I can't think of any examples either. I could think of it as coastal headlands, like for instance, Bean Éidir, Howth Head, and they're like Bean and Bhín Bhuí, Ben Bhuí in North County Mayo, but as a rock or stack, I can't think of any examples offhand.
Yeah, it must be a strangely Galavidian thing then. There's a couple of quite sharp pointed rocks in the sea, one of which I can remember, Ben Ushke, which seems to be, related to the pointed shape of this rock, I guess.
Yeah, the pointed shape is interesting because we do have in parts of the north and even in the central sort of parts of Scotland, bhíonnacha, bian, meaning forked, as in horned of an animal. So it's going back to the original meaning of the word as a horn of an animal, bian.
Yeah, we just thinking of some of the examples of words that you do find used in that way on the Irish coast. In County Donegal, for example, there's a number of sea stacks with tor, like Tor Laden, and Tor Moor, and so on. So that's obviously tor can be just used as a cliff or pinnacle generally, but it is used there specifically as a sea stack. And in County Mayo, an element that's quite common there is minon, sometimes as a kind of a projection from a cliff. I know there's examples of that on Achill Island in Mayo, and minon as a rocky island, or even just like a single rock stack in the sea. So there are lots of possibilities, though. I know that there are also a lot of them where the names are sort of metaphorical, where they're named after animals, like An Searach, the foal, and so on. So there's a lot of possibilities for giving names to that kind of a feature.
Oh, okay, Michael, are you happy with that now?
Yeah, what a thing.
Sure, right. Well, ta ceann ag a déaglann cumai, so déaglann tusa chuirceiste riúre, so an jocalurí chuirsíí an Nodas Eilrice on. So that's one for you, Ray, to give an explanation of what that term would mean.
Eilrice, it's just and it's found throughout the country. Michael's got some down in Galway as well, and it's a hunting place for deer, and even up just outside Aberdeen, there's one or two as well. We have reports, that they were sometimes constructed by people to drive deer into walls, perhaps partly turf, perhaps partly rock, and sometimes using the lie of the land as well. And as the deer were chased off the hill by men with their dogs, they were forced into a more and more narrow place at the bottom, sometimes with a blind end to it. And then the deer were slaughtered effectively with the bow's and arrows. So it goes back to some of these great deer hunts, which are big events, massive events. And there was one time Mary Queen of Scots came to the Highlands, and they put on a massive deer hunt. They spent weeks, I think, gathering up deer, so there were thousands and thousands of them driven off the hills for this massive deer hunt. But there were big events, and the Eilric was where the deer were driven.
There you are. Well, gur mai get me hall agus Josephine as na ceisna sin. Ta ceann agat a héan a chean, that's Big Bell in London and on Gaelic, no on Gaelic a dagan sin. So that's the elephant in the room here, lads. Maybe you'll clear that one up.
You really want to answer? I mean, there's an subantarctic island. I'm just trying to think of the name of the island now, and the mountain on the island is called Big Ben. I think that one's probably more legitimate than the bell and the clock tower.
Well, Léamh focus sin, Paul.
Just all I know really about it is that Big Ben is strictly the name of the bell, but commonly applied to the tower. Yeah. But quite why the bell is named that, I don't know, but I suspect that it is named after somebody.
Einta mai. So Ceanna Ríist ag méhall bhfuil ceangalar beidir scá I Shetland agus Scafell Peak in Sassen. So is Norse Taigist, Paul? Bar Logaturn Kyunshin? Is the connection between the two ones? And then which language would be involved in it?
Right. I'm not sure, but Scafell Pike, although it's the highest mountain in England, is a derivative of another neighbouring mountain, actually slightly lower, that's simply called Scafell. Now, we need a Norse expert to tell us about the fell, but the fell is the same element that comes up in some of the Scottish names that Rory mentioned there, like it's the Norse fjall. You get it in Criffel, and Rory mentioned that Blaven was possibly originally Bla fjall. But I don't know. Have we any Norse expert on hand to tell us what the ska element is?
Yeah, I'm not a Norse expert, but I would believe it's likely to be wood. Small, as in small forest wood.
Is it like skoger?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Right.
So it occurs in names like Scody in the Northwest Highlands of Scotland.
Yeah. And are you saying that in relation to the Shetland one, or do you think that applies to Scafell and Scafell Pike as well?
I don't know. I just throw it into the mix.
Yeah. It may be. I mean, we can maybe give an answer to that on. But it's not really the moment to go and jump in the library. But we've got books there on Lake District place names, and I'm sure Diana Whaley's Dictionary of Lake District place names will deal with that. If somebody wants to leave an email, we'll maybe get back to you on it.
There you are. So Ceanna Ríist from Sean agus Seórod is buinseach le logainmneacha Kenyal Igotinya is the not having the article involved. Rory, can you clear up why sometimes it does be not included?
I can't tell you why it's sometimes included. I can tell you why it's usually not included, because it was a decision of the Ordnance Survey not to include it. So where it would normally occur in Gaelic, so it would be An Creagán would be the way it would be said in Gaelic, and still would be. Mulach Mór, and so on. And the Ordnance Survey decided to simplify things by removing the article that was initial to any name. And occasionally, though, they break their own rule, and they've got it in there as well. But that's the reason.
So the question is, why did they include the article then? That's the because if the loose sort of policy was directed to simplifying it, it must have run better just with the article in it.
Yes, I mean, you've got to think about, they were thinking from an English perspective. So that the way a conversation would go would be, I was on Creagán today, rather than I was on the Creagán today. So for them, from an English language perspective, it was fine not to have the article. But in Gaelic, we would say, Vami ire Creagán. So you would have the article in there naturally speaking.
My galore. Ceann maidir le chun heroin, Paul, is Cavan. So you definitely get in Cavan a Kieran Kumai.
I think it definitely does. There's Francie Cavan is a townland name, isn't it? Is that right? In Tyrone, it rings the bell with me, and I think it was one that we covered when we did road names for Ulmer District Council. Does it ring any bells with anybody? Cavan Cá?
Well, a Yeglin or while that's a Chactisha, Éirinn Funchi show.
Module Cavan Cá,
yeah.
Well, the Cavan Creagán agus Cavan Cá, tá seo. Tá seo an some questions is it tá seo, but tá seo an good.
And I know one of the curiosities with it is that it may refer to a hollow or it may refer to a hill. And you really need to look at the local landscape to see what the meaning is likely to be in each specific case. I know. Do we have Pat Mackay with us? I think he's actually done a lot more research on the place names in areas with Cavan. Particularly, I'm thinking of Fermanagh. Is Pat there?
Yes, I'm here. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, we can.
Yeah.
No, it's interesting to know that Pomeroy in Irish is Cavan na Éirinn. So it's a good example of a Tyrone example.
Yeah.
Cavan, I think the original meaning was a hollow. Okay, but it's come to mean the opposite of it.
Yeah.
It's hard to tell in each individual case. You would have to work out which sense is meant. It's not unnatural though for that to happen. Because very often when you do get like in drumlin type country, when you get a hill, you get a hollow quite often, and it's not uncommon actually. It's not all that surprising that it could mean either.
Yeah.
The two meanings would become slightly entwined, let's say.
Yeah. And Pat, Rory mentioned mono, and I wondered if you had any view on whether there are any genuine instances of that in Ireland. I know it's not widely used as an element in mountain names or mountain ranges the way it is in Scotland, but are there any instances of it where you can be sure that it occurs in Ireland?
There are a couple of projected instances. One of them is Carnmoney, Belfast, and it has been interpreted as Carnmoney. The second element being that Scotland is, I think it's Monmouth. It's pronounced Monmouth. It's not. We say Monu, but it's Rory would be better at pronouncing the Scottish version. Anyway, that is one example. Carnmoney. Deirdre Flanagan was very keen on the presence of that element in Ireland. I think for that reason it was accepted as the second element for the official terminology, which was established by the Dublin Place Names Branch.
Yeah.
They settled on that as the official name of Carnmoney, and Deirdre Flanagan said, "Oh well, a hill is a much more likely venue for a cairn than a bog." The alternative was
Winja. Yeah, was the alternative, but yeah.
Or Monu. In the bog. She said, "Oh no, you couldn't have a cairn in a bog." So that was the reason. But the other one is Monterey near Belfast. That was the other one that was officially Dublin branch officially decided was Monu, the word meaning hill or hillside or hilly.
Yeah.
I think there are very few of them, and I'm not actually convinced myself that these are genuine examples.
Yeah. It is a difficult one. You have to look at the landscape in each case. But yeah, at least at Carnmoney there is Carnmoney Hill, which is a quite distinct, abrupt hill. Yeah. Very
conspicuous landscape features.
Yeah.
It makes sense in terms of the landscape. I'm not totally convinced of the linguistic argument for it.
Yeah.
It's too complicated to go into here, I think.
Yeah. Cormac.
Yes, so Kishtina, Francie, come on ahead, yeah, go right. You're muted at the minute, Francie, so hold on till we get you unmuted.
Right.
There you go.
Hear me now, Kieran?
Yes, loud and clear.
Yeah, Kieran. I was going to ask Paul and his experience of the place names here in Tyrone. Can he show like the dialect? Any dialect differences that you could pick?
There are place names beginning, for example, with Avish or Avish, which are characteristic of the Sperrins, and that seem to kind of refer to areas of rough pasture, mountain pasture, something like that. And I think that's an element that's not kind of widely found. I believe that most of the examples are in Tyrone, or maybe in the just a little bit over the border in Derry, but also in the Sperrins. So there are indeed there's quite a lot of information about the local dialect to be gathered from the place names.
Well, still. Kieran?
Yes, no, continue, Francis. You have the floor.
But maybe some examples I come across, because I ought to have been interested in the dialect here in Tyrone and compared to the Celtic, other Celtic areas in Donegal and that. But they like the casual, a casual. We would say casual rather than the casual. Yana for a townland rather than Yana. Maybe the own Ria River with the Ria was in the standardized Ria, but there's another one there as a traditional naming system, which you can pick out the difference too. You have Joe Pheadair or Pheadair Rua for Pheadair, or you have Paradu for Padraig, or Du for Black, Du. Paraban. We have Oin we use for Oin, much was English name very much Oin in the past. So that's another line of dialect and Irish and Tyrone, and in the wider county and the wider area.
Very good.
Very good, Francie. Kishna ag eile? No. Well, Francis, would you like to say a few words then before we wrap it up then this evening, just to thank the lads?
Well, I must say that two very experienced speakers, both Ruairí and Paul, and they give 100% effort, put 100% effort into this. So I say,
we're very.
Well, I believe that this here can be followed up, because that's probably the idea we talked of in the beginning, that it can be used for schools, that can be used for bringing communities together here. That's common ownership, and it's north, south, east, and west. So,
ain't that mine? Gur maigad, Francie. Well, Paul agus Ruairí, I know we're all at home, but if you could tap your tables, clap your hands for the two lads for what they have done. So it's just as well the microphones are muted, because that would have been a thunderous round of applause, I'm sure, boys, for your work this evening. Gur maigad as we're gidjebra in you agus a cardja shivshe a bhí an seo our son na Féile tam which harve buiach díobh agus tasúlagum gur hatchin and kaint agus and choras and gispracht and nuchtliv. So lanhi and Féile array bei sniha marach bei an iha uraniachta le fecal bio lahanach Facebook popular newel bei Myrni column agus iriolo ciali bei muja Gulfridge Kierge na Horaniachta in St. Imachin. So Arisha Gahakta Club, that's when we'll be going through our next event tomorrow evening at 8 p.m. So hopefully you can all join us then. again, on Saturday morning, we're back to online on the Zoom. So for Folamory, I know that we have a wide variety of levels. We have Gaelgary Leifa, we have Caintery Dúhis, agus Gahrod Show, agus Caintery Gallagher. But for the for Dini ag Folam, for every level, by Kirkle Cora, Ugin Sahern, Idir Hien agus Hien. So some people contacted me and said, send me up for all the events. Some of you has only just dipped your toe in the water just to come tonight. But if you wanted to get in for Saturday morning, just send me an email because it'll be much like this. You will be going via Zoom. We'll be able to converse a bit. Well, it will definitely be conversing a bit more because we'll get into rooms and work out that way there. So that's on Saturday morning at 11 o'clock. At 12 midday in An Creagán, we'll have an event for people raising families through Irish. So for dinner be a Taigiri Frasler and Kyonshin, Beshik Tarlu An Creagán, Igman Lay. Agus and Shin, Paul alluded to it, but on Sunday at 11 a.m. we're going to be meeting in St. Carclose in the Gorchin Glens. Agus been with a Golga Mulla Carn. So those lovely views that you've seen in Paul's slideshow, you can see them with your own eyes on Sunday. So as I was saying, we have ordered good weather for this weekend. So fingers crossed it'll come and we will have that there. But about 2.5 hours, we reckon, Paul, would take this here. So I know that we'll have quite an international audience and so some of you are calling in from Scotland, so I don't know if travel to get over before Sunday will be possible, but for anyone in the local area, you are more than welcome to join us on Sunday in the Car Park, Murdertme in the Gorchin Glens. If you're not sure where that is, just let me know and we'll get coordinates or we'll get that sorted out some way. And just if you are coming, we're hoping for a nice day, but maybe just be prepared for the seasons, just in case it doesn't play, the weather doesn't play ball with us.
And it can always be cooler at the summit anyway, even on a fine day. It's nearly 2,000 feet up, so you need a jacket for the wind at least, if not for the rain. But the weather forecast is looking very good.
Fingers crossed, and a bottle of water as well. It wouldn't do any harm. We're not supposed to be sharing stuff with COVID and all that there, but I would definitely bring a bottle of water, or something stronger just to keep you going over all them 2,000 feet. Okay, so Murdertme, on behalf of the festival, I would like to all thank you so much for your contributing to the discussion this evening and all the wonderful questions. Place names, we could have a meeting in the top of a mountain in Argentina and there'd be a load of people interested in place names in Éirinn. It is just one of those topics that goes across borders and everywhere. So it really was a great start to our Féile mbun and this online business that we've all had to just adjust to. One last thing, I recorded this here, so if any of you want to watch it back, just let me know, send me an email and we'll get that organised. But until tomorrow, on our Facebook, Pheadair Newell, I'll also send you all an email with a link to the Facebook. And if you haven't liked Facebook, Pheadair Newell, make sure and get on that, no matter where you are in the world. But we'll see you all at 8 o'clock tomorrow evening when our léachta takes place. Gaji Shin Slán agus Bannacht.
Slán.
Okay.
Slán agus Bannacht.
Or Maga Bhí.